All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about gear acquisition syndrome, also known as GAS. Um, Quickest disclaimer, you don't need any of this. You could do it all in your DAW with stock, whatever, if you're a producer or if you're an audio engineer. If you just know what you're doing, you don't need a whole lot besides the basics. So I guess like this could be broader though, like if you're a guitar player or things like that, you probably like acquire a lot of like tube amp heads or pedals or guitars, how I do with these. But yeah, like I said, you don't need any of this. I kind of like this for as a cure of burnout, I guess, and also so that I make things that I wouldn't like in Serum and stuff. So I'll go over, I guess, for 6 years of my production career, I suppose, it was all digital, probably more than 6 years. You can get by with what's in your DAW. Like, two really big songs I did were all done on the Ableton stock piano, you know? Ableton stock piano and free synth VSTs or just like Serum or Nexus 3. Those were like the only. Oh, and Isotope Vintage Limiter from the Isotope Ozone stuff. That's all that I had for a very long time. And it worked. Like the limitations allowed me to, be fast and get things done when I needed to like make 3 to 5 beats a day back in the day. As of now, well, I went to audio engineering school in Florida, and that was like seeing like consoles for the first time. Consoles, expensive microphones, because I was just like the only studios I was going to, like they would probably have like a Neumann or something like that, but there was no preamp, or like if it was like a knockoff 1073. And if the compress, you know what I mean, like the warm audio stuff or whatever. But so I guess like the first time like seeing some like real equipment, I just dropped my notebook. Um, so that kind of like got me into the tactile feedback, and like you realize like a lot of those producers too, as you're being like lectured by some of them and stuff, that they were just kind of like turning stuff, like turning knobs, or like just going through presets, or like because they were just like tape and stuff. Like everything was so boring before. It sounded great, but everything was so boring. So like with like whatever extra money they had, they would get these like effects units or like these compressors and stuff like that, and they would just run the whole mix through it, and then like it would create a weird sound. Like you could listen to like the Jimi Hendrix stuff, or like the Beatles are a great example. The Beatles, I think, to compromise for them not being able to harmonize as well as the Beach Boys, they went so avant-garde. I mean, like despite the drugs, they went so avant-garde with their tape, production, or like, putting Neumanns and condoms and then like blowing water in Yellow Submarine and stuff like that. Like that gave them, those limitations gave them creative. It helped them like do things they probably wouldn't have done. Like a song that always comes to mind is like Tomorrow Never Knows, or like the whole Revolver album, to be honest, like with all the Varispeed and reversing and tape loops and stuff. So yes, all of these, and if you're an audio engineer, all your rack equipment, despite the tactile feedback and like, if you're a guitar player and so on, if you have a nice guitar, this is like if you already have nice stuff, any new thing is an imaginary, it is an expensive solution to an imaginary problem. You can like just until you're like so tired of the thing you got, use it until you know it like the back of your hand, and then you know what I mean, like then it's there. If you ever like, if someone's like, oh, I need this really quick, I can go to my Prophet and like, because it's the one I've had the longest, and just like boop boop, and it's there. You know, I know how to program this thing so fast. I don't even save my presets, but that's just like that's a whole other video. Um, this video is gonna be a lot of rambling. I apologize. But yes, less is always more. Use the tools you have and then maybe like sharpen them. I was recently looking at swapping out maybe like my Prophet for a mini Moog. Um, but then I was like, you know, I would be really just taking a loss financially, and also I already know this Prophet very well. Why don't I sharpen this tool? And then I got some pedals over here. And the same with the Oberheim. I was like, really want like a Moger Foger delay from Moog or a phaser, but they're mono. But I ended up finding like a Walrus Marikai. I think I got like the last one or whatever because they just released them. But you know, like that way I don't have to like go and like, that already has a Moger Foger delay in it up at the top. That Moog does. So I already have one in that. Like, why don't I just sharpen the other tools, and then I get my own sounds, and I get a good sound going into either my Soyuz Lakeside or into my Apollo. I run, you know, I could buy a little API box and, you know, run a little console in here, but I got the Luna API console and it works fine for what I do. And I have to like remind myself that it's like, what is like that big ass thing doing here gonna fix that I don't, you know what I mean? Nothing. No one's gonna care, because when I send stuff off to like songwriters or to record labels or to A&Rs, like, or like melodies to other producers and stuff, like who's gonna like care that it was like on an API unless I tell them, and like 9 times out of 10 they don't know what that is. Yeah. But at the same time, don't cheap out. And cheaping out will always end you, you know, we'll mention the B company for like synthesizers and pedals, or like the W company that I already said the name of for audio engineers. You know, the third party knockoffs recreating something, unless it's like a very faithful recreation approved by the company, then of course that's fine. But by all means, but cheaping out, like say you wanted like a 1073 but you couldn't afford it, just save until you can afford a 1073 or a Klarna or a Ferment, you know. Actually, that's not financial advice, but you know, like if there's a will, there's a way. I would just like save up for the thing you really need, because you're gonna end up getting, if you cheap out, you're gonna end up with a lot of little like cheap stuff instead of just getting the one thing the one time. Like I have my Soyuz Lakeside here. Maybe I'll do a review. I don't know if I want to make this channel or a review channel, but it's awesome. But I could have cheaped out on like a billion other, you know, preamps, but you know, with the microphone I have and stuff like that, like I wanted a very mid-range focused preamp. Plus they're a microphone company, like they're gonna do a good job on their preamp. It's not a 1073, it doesn't need to sound like a 1073. Anyways, the point is, I could have gotten a very cheap preamp and, you know, had fun with that maybe, but I wouldn't have like, it doesn't hold the same weight, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't like, there's no, like it's better to have the nice thing once. Even if you only have one of them, is better. One nice thing is better than, you know, quality over quantity. God damn, it's so hard to talk today. Sorry. What else? And sharpening that tool might just be like a distressor. I don't have distressor money right now, but I will save up and get a distressor. You know, so yes, with yeah, okay.